Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and today we are talking about World Wonders, which is published by Arcane Wonders and designed by Zé Mendes.
We purchased this game at Essen, and it was one of our first purchases. And in World Wonders, it's a 1 to 5 player tile placement game in which you get to build these lovely world wonders. But before we get too much into it, let's look at how it plays. At the start of the game, players decide whether to use the beginner board with a lake in the middle or the asymmetric boards with meandering rivers, and then you get ready to build. Each round, all players start with 7 coins, and then starting from the first player, everyone takes turns buying something from the market. If this is a road, tower, or building, you pay the cost and move your income marker accordingly. If it's a wonder, you spend all of your remaining money for the round. It doesn't matter if that's 1 or 7, it all goes. When building, there are a few things to keep in mind. Towers can go anywhere, roads need to connect to roads or towers, buildings need to connect to roads or to buildings of the same color, and they gain you resources when they are built, and wonders need to follow the specific rules on their cards. Also, if someone builds a type of building or road before you, that slot won't refill until the next round, although if they build a wonder, a new one replaces it right away. After 10 rounds, players add up points earned from the wonders they built, their uncovered natural resources, the number they reached on their lowest of the 3 resource tracks, anything they gained from population or advanced goals, and 1 point for each building they fully surrounded. And then, the greatest builder of wonders is named.
So the first thing that we have got to talk about are the wonders themselves. The components in this game are pretty fantastic, and especially these wonders. They're just something so satisfying about building a little 3D thing on your board, like amongst all of the other tiles, especially when it's these big guys. Like these pyramids that come in the 3s or the Great Wall of China it's just so fun to put those on the board. I don't know why it's so fun, but it's so fun.
And you get to build a monument almost every round, so you usually kind of end up with maybe about 8 or so. So it is really satisfying because it's not like you just end up with 1 on your board. You usually get a good mix, which at the end makes it look really cool.
Yeah, and that's 8 in the 2-player game. If you're playing like 4 or 5 players, you're probably going to end up with more like 4 or 5 wonders because there's 30 total wonders. So you can do the math of how that's going to kind of work out. You rarely are going to build every single wonder in a game, but in a 2-player game, we often end up with like 7 each, where really we are like A, B, B, W, always be building wonders.
And so that is the wonders themselves, but looking at the tiles are good. They have little details on them. So the blue tiles have dome buildings, the green tiles have like trees and pastures, and the purple tiles are like these triangular buildings. So even on the little tiles themselves, there is a nice amount of detail, I would say.
Yeah, and the boards behind, like everything's nice and clear. The only thing that might be a bit of a knock is the actual player boards where you manage your resources, because these are single-sided, so they are a little bit slidey. And especially at the like the price tag for this, it kind of feels like maybe those could have been double layered. Although it also would have been pretty tricky now that I say that, because these are all different unique shapes for each kind, and I don't think I'd want to lose that. So, maybe I take that back. I'm on the fence about this, whether this should be double layered or there should be these, or if there's a way to do both, I don't know.
And you are able to, at a glance, count up how many you do have.
Yeah.
So if it ever does get knocked, you can look down on your board. It's not ideal, but you can figure it out. Because what is really interesting is how you're spending your money too, because that's not going from round to round. Instead, each round, everyone starts at 7. And I haven't seen really a lot of games that have done that before.
No, it is. It really does balance things out. And actually, that kind of brings us to the player count, because that is going to feel different at 2 players versus 3 or 4 or 5. Because it's a little bit of a race. So you saw it in the how to play, how you spend your money. is you buy stuff each round, and then if you buy Monument, you spend all of your money, everything else you've got at once. So in 2 players, you're pretty comfortable because there's 3 monuments out, and you kind of have some time because there are, 6 different kinds of buildings, plus 2 kinds of roads, plus a tower, plus a monument. So you're probably going to be able to get things and like eke out all of your money. But it like a 3-player game, you're not adding anything else here in a 3-player game. In a 4-player game, you're adding 1. In a 5-player game, you're adding 2 more kinds of buildings and then a couple more roads. But that does mean that you've got less, like mathematically, there's more players going for a smaller pool of things, which means you really have to race to that stuff.
Yeah, so at 2 players, because I can also keep an eye on what you're building, I'll know that only I can get that wonder, for example, so I may as well just wait, spend as much money as I can, and then get it. But with more players, you might not have an idea, or you might have a sense that there are a couple of you that can get this one wonder that you really want. So you might spend it when you have like 5 remaining or something really high just to guarantee that you're going to get it. So I think that is definitely going to feel a bit different. And what is interesting is as soon as somebody gets one, a new one immediately gets revealed. So sometimes that ends up being a good thing because then the new one gets revealed. You're like, ooh, I can get that one, which is great. And at more players, the other thing to note is player order is so important. Like being able to go first might be really valuable to get the one color tile that has to do with a lot of the wonders. And so you can spend money to like early on to try and get that first player or second player because it's not a turn like order. It doesn't switch each round.
Yeah, and there is also a solo mode that uses a deck of cards to just get rid of buildings each round, and then it scores based on your total resources. But that means that you're just kind of always building wonders and not building other stuff, so you play a little bit weird, and I'm not sure I would recommend it, but it is a little bit of a different way to play.
It is, and that leads a little bit into the variability with how different it feels each game as well, because of the restrictions when it comes to building can definitely change that feeling of the game. One of those things is this board can be 2 different sides. And so for one side, all the water is in the middle, making it a little bit easier to build because you're not allowed to build on water. Whereas the other one is a river that's a little bit different for each board, depending on what board you get.
Yeah, they're all just slightly asymmetric. It's not like a wild difference. And actually, we played like 3 games before I even noticed that they were asymmetric. So it's not that asymmetric, but there are some that do feel a little bit different. Like this one over here, even the water's almost right at the edge. Whereas this guy here, it's pretty much straight down the middle. And that does make a little bit of a difference, and it does feel a little bit different from game to game. Also, there are these goal cards that you can use in advanced variant, but you're pretty much going to use from like your second game on. And you put 3 of those out in a game, and so everyone's racing towards those goals, and that's going to make a big difference.
And then just with tile placement games, the order in which the tiles come up is going to make a difference. And because it's easier to place tiles that match ones that already exist in terms of how you can build, that's going to influence how you're building things as well. And the wonders that come out, the order that the wonders come out, and the wonders are so like appealing, but they're also a bit of a restriction. Like as soon as you put them out, you can't automatically build next to them. So you do have to figure out just where they're going to go, and then might have to get something to get you being able to build beyond the wonders too.
Yeah, I almost wonder if you could win. I wonder if you could win without wonders. It's because you might be able to, but I wouldn't be able to restrain myself from building them because they're so cool. But you're right. They're a thing you just cannot. They're like a dead end for building until you manage to get a road or get another building around it. So they do hinder you, but it's just you just can't stop yourself from making them.
Yeah, and so that does lead to what makes this, or does anything make this different from the other tile placement games in the market? And I think the 3D-ness definitely does. I mean, I think that's the draw for like Foundations of Rome, which we haven't played because that one has a much higher price tag. But having a 3D, really something that stands up above, is really appealing.
Yeah, but just gameplay-wise as well. So if you're like not enamored with the 3D-ness of this, that's fair. But gameplay-wise, this does add something, I think, just a little bit different. It's not, so this is not like a wild change in tile placement, I wouldn't say. I wouldn't even say this is as different from tile placement games as like Planet Unknown was last year. But I do think that this brings enough to the table because of how you do this resource management thing and because of the money spending. And I really do like the interactivity of how the market works and how that decision of how much am I going to spend and when am I just going to take that leap and buy my wonder and close out the round versus am I just going to eke this out with little buildings. And so it gives you a few different paths.
So who is it for? Well, if you love tile placement games, well, this is a tile placement game. And I think it has a little bit more, like a little bit of a step up from things like Barren Park, Patchwork, Acropolis, like the gateway tile placement games. I think there's just a little bit more to this game than those.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I wouldn't say this is not like a mid-weight game or anything. This is like kind of like an Azul-ish weight. And I think like that, it's got kind of an equal level maybe of decision making, a little bit of an equal level to that of like interaction between players, and it looks really pretty, which really does help with gateway gamers. But if you are into heavier games, if you're looking for like a real challenge in a tile placement game, this is still very much a lightweight game. And if you're not enamored with the 3D-ness of the bits, that's a pretty big part of this, and it's a big part of the price tag of this as well. So maybe it wouldn't be for you.
Yes, but if you do like the 3D bits, and if you do like tile placement games, and you like the lighter spectrum and want a little bit more depth, then this might be along the lines of what you're looking for.
Yeah, this is one, I like this one quite a bit. We've played this a bunch already. This is one of the first ones we played. I think this was the first game we played when we brought it back from the hotel in Essence. So all of that adds up to something that we have enjoyed. And that is it. That is World Wonders, the very three-dimensional tile placement game.
Thank you so much for watching. Please let us know in the comments if you managed to try World Wonders or what your current favorite tile placement game is. And as usual, please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.